Lesson 2 in Chapter 9 is all about the specialized cells that you find in a plant and what they do. Now, we've talked about some cells already, and we're going to continue on with that. Now, in plants, you need to have gas exchange. That's really important. The plant needs to be able to get in carbon dioxide, and it also needs oxygen. So plants require CO2 and water in order to photosynthesize. They also require oxygen for cell respiration. Photosynthesis makes glucose for the plant. So if you have an apple, the reason why it tastes sweet is because the apple tree made glucose using photosynthesis. The plants also require oxygen for cell respiration because cell respiration is the process that uses glucose to provide energy for the plant to do certain things like growing. All plants have a certain structure called a stomata on the underside of the leaf, and what that is a hole, and it allows oxygen and CO2 to pass in and out of the plant. You can see here the holes that you see. These are microscope images, and the top one here, the holes are the stomata. The cells around that open and close the hole is called a guard cell, or two guard cells actually. There's another picture here that we can see, even a little bit bigger, so there's a little more detail. You'll see the hole in the middle, or the opening, is the stomata. The cells on the outside are the guard cells. Once in the leaf, air spaces between the cells allow gases to move easily through the leaf. So that would be in between the spongy tissue cells. Now, carbon dioxide dissolves in the water film on the leaf surface and then diffuses down its gradient, so it goes from a concentration, or high concentration, to low concentration, and oxygen is the thing that diffuses out. It makes more oxygen during photosynthesis than it uses for cell respiration. How carbon dioxide enters a leaf. Air diffuses through the stomata and into the leaf. So it goes in through that hole, that pore we saw on the previous slide. So it circulates through those spongy and palisade tissue cells. The carbon dioxide diffuses down the concentration gradient, so it goes from high concentration to low concentration. Chloroplasts will use the carbon dioxide in photosynthesis. That's what that PHS stands for. The oxygen produced during photosynthesis passes out of the cells and into the air spaces, and then oxygen diffuses through the stomata and out of the plant. Carbon dioxide enters into the leaf through the stomata and into the spongy tissue cells, like we said before. Oxygen diffuses out of the spongy tissue cells and is released through the same pore, the same hole, the stomata. Water, which enters the leaf through the network of xylem, so it comes up from the bottom of the plant, also can exit through the stomata as vapor. Now, the word for that is called transpiration, and you talk about that more in Bio 20. In this picture here, you can see the different layers of a usual leaf. So the palisade layers on the top here, you see there's some air spaces in between. However, in the spongy layer of tissue cells, you've got much more area for air and gases to be circulated. On the bottom of the leaf, you have those stomata, so the pores or the holes. The cells on the outside of your stomata are called guard cells. You have your phloem on the middle part. You can see of this vascular tissue. The xylem is on the outside portion, and you also have chloroplasts in the palisade layer. That's the part that does the photosynthesis. On the top of the leaf here, you'll see the cuticle. That's just the protective layer. Now, in the stem and the roots, some gas exchange can occur. However, most of that gas exchange does occur in the leaves. For plants that are covered in bark, the only way for this to happen is through small openings called lenticels. So you see in the pictures here, these holes, they almost look like the tree has scars on it. But they're not scars, they're just holes or pores, just like the stomata, but instead of being on the leaf, they're on the stem or the bark of a tree. If you go to Elkwater, you'll see many trees that have these. Now, while gases are exchanged, water is lost to the atmosphere. So as oxygen comes out of the stomata, it brings some water vapor with it. Evaporation from the leaves creates a water gradient within the plant that literally pulls water from the roots to the top of the plant. Okay, this type of evaporation in plants is called transpiration, just like I talked about before. This process, again, you will see in Bio 20. Guard cells control how much water is lost. Now those guard cells can open and close. So water can move in and out of the guard cells by osmosis. Remember, osmosis is the passive transport of water in and out of the cell. So if you have more water going into the guard cell, they will swell up. When you have water coming out of the guard cell, they will change shape, or they'll shrivel. So when water moves into the guard cells, they swell as the water pressure increases, and this is called turgor pressure. That's a good word to know. Okay, turgor pressure is where you have more water pressure on the inside of the cell and it becomes more structured. The swollen guard cells change shape and open the stoma, or the stomata. The water vapor can then evaporate from the leaf's surface. As the amount of water in the guard cells decreases, they shrink and close the stoma, or the stomata. So we remember osmosis is the diffusion of water across the cell membrane. So it's passive transport of water going from outside of the cell to inside of the cell, or vice versa. As water moves into the guard cells, the water pressure inside increases and causes the cells to swell. Again, this is called turgor pressure. So when is photosynthesis highest and when is it lowest? It's highest when the stomata are opened. So when you have everything you need for photosynthesis, lots of light, lots of water, and lots of CO2. It's lowest when the stomata would close. So during those times when photosynthesis is the lowest, the stomata are going to be closed. The reason for this is the opening and closing are determined by the amount of water in the guard cells. So if the plant has lots of water, you're going to have the stomata open because of that turgor pressure. If you have a lack of water, those stomata are going to close to save water in the plant so it doesn't dehydrate. In most plants, the stomata open during the day and close at night. That is something important to know. Except for plants that are in very, very dry or extreme conditions. Okay, in these types of plants, it's going to be usually the opposite. The stomata close during the day to minimize water loss. Okay, so for example, like in a desert is very, very hot and very, very dry. So the stomata are going to stay closed so the plant doesn't lose too much water and shrivel up. For your homework, please continue to work on your blue review booklet. Remember, it's due Wednesday.